All right. Welcome back to the Built by Bailey's podcast. Evan Bailey, how are you this evening, sir?
Satisfactory, Shane.
Satisfactory. Good.
Yep.
That's an
Yep.
honest answer.
I want to be honest with you. I'm satisfactory. Yeah. No, I'm doing great.
Good. Good. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited for our next guest that we'll be talking about in just a minute. We'll introduce her. But before we get started, once again, we want to say thank you to our sponsors, Confluence SBC. Tom Hardy, confluencesbc.com is a co-working space in Lafayette, Colorado. They have memberships still available for renting a desk. You can do that monthly. You can get an annual membership. He has, I believe, still some office space available on 3-year term leases, 1-year term leases. They are gearing back up. Things are opening back up. So he's very excited. It's an amazing building. Again, like I always say, Evan and I started our podcasting in that building and love it. So we want to say thanks to Confluence SBC and also to Brian Scott of 6ix9ine Designs. Brian, of course, as you guys know, has done all the logo stuff for us, the logo behind me. He's an amazing graphic artist. He does work with all kinds of big names such as Copper Mountain Waste Management. He can wrap your vehicle and he can definitely put out stickers for your company. Look up 6ix9design.com. He's also on Instagram. The link will be right here. And you guys make sure you follow him on Instagram as well. With that being said, we'd like to welcome our next guest, the owner of Modular Sure Site, Audree Grubesic. Welcome to the show.
Nicely
Nice
done.
job.
Nice job, Shane. Crushed it.
Tongue twister, but I nailed it. It's got to slow.
Sitting here waiting
In
for
your
it.
mouth.
Yes. Nice. For all you listeners, we made sure that we got the company right, Audree's last name right. The pressure was on Shane. He delivered.
It's so good.
He did so good. And we're doing this a late night recording, so just officially on record, thank you, Audree, for doing this at this time. We're all busy people, and we thank you for working around schedules and stuff and doing this. I'm sure you got other things to do, and we're happy that you're here spending a little bit of time with us. So thank you.
Oh,
Yes,
I'm
Audree,
thrilled
thank you very
too.
much.
Thank you for
Yeah.
asking me. I'm super excited to be here with both of you. So let's talk some conversation.
Let's
about
talk
some
some
modular
conversation. Yes,
conversation.
right. So why don't you tell everybody, give us a little bio about you, your company, etc., so we can set some framework up here.
Absolutely. So I am what you would call a serial entrepreneur. I was not always in construction. Actually, I started in TV. I was a TV engineer in Chicago, Illinois, right out of college. So that was my background for about 10 years. And then I went from TV, or I went from TV into radio, into billboard sales, into having my own advertising agency, moving out here in Colorado. Yes, like 21 years ago.
Wow.
Long story
21
short,
years lying to us. It has been 21 years. There's no
That's a local.
Time. I love it
That's
here.
a local.
I love it here. It is. Absolutely. And then I started working with a builder in Colorado Springs and did a lot. My background is sales and marketing, really, to be honest. And I was the director of new business development for them. I started in sales, and from that, I always wanted to be my own builder. And I worked for another builder after that in Denver, Colorado. And I was talking with our operations manager, and he was the one that actually started telling me about the show he went to, and they started talking about offsite construction or modular construction. And I was like, whoa, what is that, right? I don't really know too many people that are speaking about it. And then I started diving in really deep. Unfortunately, they had some issues within their business. And 4 years ago, in 2017, I started Modular Sure Site and completed 5 of my own general contracting projects with 4 different factories. I actually contracted all 4 projects within 1 year's time. I was driving 1,000 miles a week.
Oh, God.
And it was
Sounds
horrible. It was horrible. But I loved the whole concept of having a home, arrive on a site, connecting it to a foundation, and it being complete, pretty much complete, except the site work, right?
Right.
So that kind of brings me to current day. And now I started from that experience moving into more of consulting and managing projects with pre-construction and details in that space. So it's been a long journey. It's been exciting, and the industry is only just getting bigger and better.
It is,
Yeah,
and
it's great.
we're cut a little bit from the same cloth.
Mhm.
So I too, I was reading about you. I'm a communications major, and cut my
Nice.
teeth in sales, and
Mhm.
became a serial entrepreneur. Some of
Mhm.
that was Shane. There's Bailey Custom Homes, Pinion Resources, a consulting firm, restaurants and coffee shops. And so when I was reading this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the better version of me.
I am
Like, this
so
is it.
proud.
Yes.
I'm so
Yeah.
proud to be here. I just
And
don't
I
even know
moved
what to
out to
do.
Colorado 20 years ago as well. So I
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh.
this is crazy.
That is
And I just
very
thought
crazy.
I would start off with my first question. Do we know each other? I'm just kidding.
We were running parallel
Yeah, we
paths.
were. Yeah, we were. I think you lapped me. But my question for you a little bit in the beginning is, you said that right now you're doing a lot of consultative work around modular construction. Are you doing the modular construction, or are you working with other modular construction companies or outfits to service certain projects that you're overseeing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I would say I'm more or less building the pre-construction team.
Okay.
I'm a direct contact for those teams in order to also buy product.
Mhm.
So they can buy their duplexes, their townhomes, their hospitals, their education places, anything that they want to construct. I can do that within my factory because I have my own dedicated factory line. So I developed the pre-construction team from, everybody from civil, from structural, architectural, building that whole asset and the team in the beginning, and really actually also working with developers and builders to understand this form of construction and what it takes to build it.
Okay. So you'd be a good person to ask this question. What do people not get yet about modular construction?
The whole thing.
Right? This is what I feel like. Jay and I have had this discussion so many times. Like, I don't
Right?
like,
It's
I
like
watch a
this
job site and I'm just
buzzword.
like, I don't really know why we're still here. We've been doing this for 60 years. I got literally every known answer to the universe in my pocket, yet we're still building homes the same way we did, roughly, for the
Yeah.
last like 60 years.
Yep.
And there's something like modular construction out there. And it's just like, I don't get why this is not happening yet. Is it the consumer who is like, whoa, I don't want my house? Is this like the bigger version of laminate flooring? Like, no, I want real hardwood. You're like, look, it's come a long way
Actually,
since then.
I think the consumers are the ones asking for it. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
they're the ones, I think it's more fear-based by developers and builders.
Mhm.
It's interesting when builders get into construction, they build their first house and are like, oh my God, I'm going to do my first house. This is really scary, but they get through it.
Yep.
It's the same thing with modular, right? You're just changing your form of how you're going to be building or
That's right.
constructing the
Yep.
project. And so there's this big like, oh my gosh, I can't do it. And then there's this preconceived notion that modular or offsite construction is the same as manufactured.
Right.
Right.
It's a
Right?
big
Totally.
misnomer. Yep.
So
Yeah.
misnomer, right? And
Mhm.
I mean, here's the thing. I love all offsite construction. If you're going to just start dipping your toe into panelization, awesome, right?
Mhm.
Because it takes little steps for people to understand this format. And it doesn't matter me if you want to start with containers and do that, awesome. Any kind of area that you can actually help your business with more efficiencies is progress.
Mhm.
I agree. Shane and I have talked about it a ton where, we're big shipping container guys and we're really
Mhm.
interested in that, and have been doing research, having conversations, networking within that community for, I don't know, Shane, what, almost 2 years now,
Yeah, probably about
maybe
that.
even
Mhm.
longer.
Right.
And, you run into the same kind of real structured constructs that people have with that type. And Shane and I have almost had to recreate a new narrative just to engage in conversations with people where we're like, you're thinking we're taking a steel box and cutting out windows. And what we're doing is steel construction. And
Right.
if you can start to wrap your brain around the idea that it's not used shipping containers and it's just steel structures, then that first wall kind of breaks down. And then the only thing you'd have to do after that is really show them conceptually what it would look like finished. and they're almost all the way there in a heartbeat. They're like, oh my God, why is this not a thing?
Right.
And you're like, well, it is a thing. It's just not a thing that is really, I wouldn't even call, I mean, it's borderline getting mainstream.
Yes.
But it's not standardized yet as a general construction practice.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's probably represents a fraction.
Yeah.
So what do you know, like what the,
and I think modular is the same way. I think, you know, Evan, it's a fraction, right?
Yeah.
Since COVID, my company has quadrupled in business.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Because, and just like what you're doing, people are trying to find new forms, easier ways, more efficiencies, how they can get things done because there's less trade base. So like, even when you guys are talking about containers, great. I love that narrative. It's the conversation, the same kind of things that I do, the same things that we are doing to educate. But it's not only that part of just the audience or the builder and developer, it's also educating all the trades.
Yep.
Right. Totally.
Right.
Totally,
so you're bringing that whole nother element in. I mean, it's just it's going to be a growing process. And I do see great opportunities in what we're achieving. They're small steps, but I feel that the consumer is ready for this. I think it's the hesitation on the other side and the education of understanding, like in my world, volumetric or, you know, modular construction just means that they're modules that are constructed in a factory, completely finished and brought to the site. Right.
Yeah.
And then you're also talking about the same codes. Like we were also talking about it's built under the same IRC or International Residential Code as a regular home.
Yep.
Same difference, but it's just those little narratives, like you were saying, to having those conversations of educating people. And now that people are really asking for it and understanding it, it's changing. And so it makes me happy to see that, because we have to change the one industry that is so far behind. I mean, you look at our cars, they're built at a factory. You look at our phones, they're built at a factory. Every single thing is really manufactured from something.
Borderline our food.
Gosh, right?
Yeah, borderline our food is manufactured at
Unfortunate.
this point. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, and I do see a regression away from that a little bit, but I think there is well, it's just like anything, right? When you have a new concept or idea, and for context, we'll just call modular a new idea, just because it's not the it's not the
majority of building.
There you go, right? And there's always this path to entry that's always a little tricky. And you have your laggards that are out there that just will hold on to hold on's sake, you know, and then you have early adopters, which are like, you know, probably us three, who were just saying, well, we're going to push the innovation. And, you know, and using the shipping containers is the same idea. It's Shane and I have had to come to the conclusion that, you know, we may do this shipping container development and really take it to a different place. But in 20 years, it likely won't be shipping containers. But it's the thing that breaks through the ceiling a little bit. And as long as we stay flexible, it may be 3D printed homes at some point. But you got to first say what we're doing currently is inefficient, or it's antiquated, or it's not good economically. And that usually, for the people really pushing that narrative, it's a little messy.
Right.
So let me ask you, Audree, why do you think people are asking for this more?
I think that the realistic scenario of what's happening is we don't have enough general contractors, and we don't have enough trades, and they're trying to, like, now what's happening is they're buying their land, they're getting prepared, they're educating themselves, they're figuring out the build process, because it's still a build process, right? And I just think that, you know, what's happening in the marketplace currently, as we're all aware, is that building material prices continue to increase. And so if you can find a price for a home or a project, and you have cost certainty, and you know when you're signing on the dotted line without making any change orders or anything to that project, you know the cost of that.
Right.
That is huge.
Yep.
Right. And
Cost
then knowing
certainty.
that, yes,
I
and
love
knowing
that.
that you can get it done within a certain amount of time.
Right.
You know,
Timelines.
and yeah, Shane, I mean, you and I were talking about it when I started. I did a custom home, a 4-box modular custom home in Keystone with a huge amount of customization. We had to do a garage. We had to do a custom basement. We had about half of the house was, stonework that we had to do.
Mm.
And that house took us 12 months to complete, which was outstanding in a market in a winter, in a market that is, takes anywhere from 18 to 36 months to complete that same type of project size.
Yeah,
if
any
you were
6
gonna do
months
a
of the year
traditional.
here, you're going to get screwed on weather. So
Absolutely,
yep.
right? So then I go all the way,
Yeah.
and then getting all the way through those processes, I kept getting faster and faster and faster. And our trade started understanding, hey, I don't have to be there for electrical for a whole week on the house. I can be there for less than 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody started understanding the pattern. Our last project was basically 880 square foot, 1-box modular. And after we had it set on the foundation, it was completed in 28 days.
It's amazing.
That's crazy.
It's wonderful because this industry, like you've touched on, I think this is one of the reasons probably why you guys got busier during COVID, is we've had all the squeeze happening and material costs and inefficiencies. And there's been a huge depletion of trades, irregardless, that's not a word, sorry, of, yeah, sure, it's now it's a word.
Now it's, yeah, it is it's a word. It's a word. Yeah.
but you've already had the depletion of trades in this industry before anything else, including pandemics or anything else, has come along. And so you're already dealing with not having enough hands on deck to build. But if you had the same hands on deck that were efficient in even several trades, which is another way to go with some of this, then your timeline decreases, then your speed of delivery increases, and you have costs come way down. And like Audree was saying, you have this ability to literally quantify the entire project and say, I've got this many months and this is what my cost is going to be. Just like a vehicle will be produced, it's going to cost us this much to build it, and you can just do it over and over again. Mm-hmm. That's a business model. That's the way businesses should run, right? Not it's around this and maybe 12 months, maybe 14, maybe 2 years. I don't know. There's so many I don't knows, which is probably a lot of the reasons why general contractors get a bad rap too, is there are a lot of uncertainties, but you can contain all of that within building in one spot and having the same people on deck where you're not having people travel around. I mean, tracing trades is, I'm
very
trying to
difficult.
do a lot of tongue twisters in this show.
You're really doing well.
But tracing trades is really difficult. And if you have them all in one place, that cuts down on the timeline too. And so, yeah, I mean, with all the cost uncertainties.
Being a general contractor is the most difficult. I have to say, being a builder, just with like, people don't even think about builders. Like everyone's like, builders are making so much money. Oh my gosh, right? But there's so much, I mean, there's insurance, there's trades, there's like so many details that you, and there's like, 200,000 pieces in a house.
Right.
There's so much difficulty. And I always think like the general contractor, honestly, is a problem solver. Because there's not a time or a day that goes completely how you want it to go.
That's right. Every single day.
Okay, cool. What I was going to add to that, and Shane will be here in a second, is I've explained it when I'm consulting with people on renovations. I do quite a bit. I would say quite a bit. I've done quite a bit. And, the first thing Shane and I did when we were together with Bailey Custom Homes was I'd lay out a realistic expectation. I would say, look, at the very end of this, you're going to have this beautiful kitchen and you're going to love it. And you're going to forget about what it took to get here. But what's going to happen inevitably is, as happy as you are to get the renovation started, you're going to get tired of cooking in your microwave down in your basement. You're going to get tired of the dust and the people and the uncertainty of when people show up, when they leave. It's going to take longer than we're probably laying out, and we've even put a buffer. There's going to be things that will come up that will alter your design, and that too will be frustrating. You're going to tell me that you're spending money on what you want, and I'm going to say, that's fine. You can spend as much as you want, and I'll get you exactly what you want, but it may cost you more, right? And it's like all of that is going to happen, right? And I just want to say it up front to you, when we come to that point and you say, Evan, I'm tired of the mess, or I'm so tired, this guy didn't show up until 11 and that screwed up my schedule. And it's like, remember, I told you this, right? And it's only to help ground you in expectation. And I think about taking that times 50 of starting with a raw piece of land and saying, we're going to build your house for you. And it's like the amount of things that can go wrong on an on-site build, between weather, between getting people to the job site, between material errors, shortages, contractors. You're trying to stay on schedule, and your electrician is sick, and next thing you know, it's this catastrophic windfall of pushing schedules back and entering into other people's schedule. And the sheer fact that you can do it in less time, because the more time you have means the more time for things to go wrong. And if a project takes 1 month, that is a lot easier to control. And that's an unrealistic, maybe in my, it seems unrealistic to always have 1 month build times. Over the course of the year, the amount of things that just that can go wrong in a year, the longer you stretch it out, the more that I think I feel like I actually heard you say this on a podcast. It's more things will go wrong on a job site than they will go right, or it was something like that. And it's like or more things are going to go wrong than things will work out perfectly.
Your margin of error stretches the longer you go.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the kind of unrecognized to the layman consumer about modular construction. It's like, well, that's almost the same price per square foot. It's a little bit less, but I'm sacrificing on my house being built in a factory. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much to unpack there with what you just said. I feel like I want to really rework your entire mindset on that. And I don't know if it's the fact that you think it's a lower quality, or the fact that you think that it's just this building price per square foot and not potential holding cost and the construction cost and the delays, and you trying to get out of whatever living situation you're in now to planning on moving into a new job or into a new house, and what that will look like. Are you prepared to be in by Christmas? And it's like, what? Oh no, I want to have Christmas there. Well, you may not have Christmas there. And those kind of things, I think it's like, that's one of the benefits of, in my mind, of moving towards standardizing modular construction. Does any of that, does that sound like when you talk about to the consumer thinking about doing modular, how much of it is around just price and quality versus the entire process benefiting the customer?
Yeah, and I think it's, like you were saying, there's 3 pieces to this process when you're building, right? You have the land, then you have the house, and then you have the site work. So you're educating in all 3 of those areas, right? So it is difficult, and it's also difficult because, like in my area, you are going to make all these decisions, all the selections, all the exteriors, everything in that home or in that building without actually seeing it. Because you're going to be picking everything either online, or you're going to be asking for some selections to come in from the manufacturer that you can kind of review. But it's really, everything is really set up in the very pre-start of this project. You're doing everything in the pre-construction stage for it to come on site. So that again is very, very unusual, right? A regular home, you have to go to a design center, or you have selections and you go there and you're able to touch them and feel them and go there like 1,500 times. And there are so many selections, it makes you almost nuts. And that, and so it makes it a little bit more difficult for the consumer, Evan and Shane. But I think the overall experience of what I've had, and anybody that's going to be walking into this as a builder or developer, it's like the first time you build a home, it never goes smoothly. But I can tell you from my experience and the projects that we're doing now in townhomes and condos and apartment buildings and these larger projects, when you have the right team and you set it up at the beginning, just like setting up a house, and you get that nailed down, it's amazing the amount of efficiencies and understanding. Plus, the consumer doesn't have to have a really long construction loan. Typically, it condenses that, and they're able to save money there. So there's so many costs. There's so much dialogue that goes into these conversations that it's never like a it's not that easy as just being like, here's my homes and, there you
Yeah.
go,
How much is
right?
the financing component? Sorry, Shane, how much is
No,
the
it's fine.
financing component an issue? I mean, are there equal number of banks who are willing to lend on this?
It's interesting because when I started 4 years ago, there was like 3 or 4, and now I think I have 25. And
Okay.
what we're finding on the lending side, on the commercial side, is that there are more and more banks starting to realize the efficiencies of this, because you have the building all paid for, it gets to the site and you're making really fast draws. It's a really, sophisticated system. But in that regard too, we also have to be really smart, because is the factory got enough equity in it? Are they going to be around for the next 30 years? Are they going to be around for the next, 90 days? Those are things that we have to find out too, and make sure that you're using your resources and your research to make sure you're working with the right manufacturer.
Yep. And the consumer, it's funny how everything on this end makes sense to the end consumer, right? It makes sense to the buyer. Financing is going to be cheaper because there's a shorter timeline. I get to pick almost everything that I want to put into the home ahead of. It's more organized. It's less delayed. So to the consumer, it's like it's a no-brainer. But you get into the general contractor, the builder side, and there's a lot of pushback still. And I think some of it is because there's uncertainty, there's unknowns, it's new, it's scary, whatever, just like you're talking about from the first build or of anything, even stick build. Right. But the resistance to get through to more GCs, and maybe you can even answer how many you've picked up.
That's the difficult part, Shane, is that we don't have enough general contractors.
Right.
When I started 4 years ago, when I started my company, I'm like, I'm going to meet every single retailer. I met 16 different retailers in the state that actually sold modular buildings. And I asked them and talked to them, and a lot of them were their own general contractor. They were basically, turnkey. And so they're really excited when I came in, because I'm a general contractor for them, to be able to pick up these projects. So they're like, oh my gosh, right? And at that time too, I've probably networked with over 100 builders, trying to convince them to work with me. And they're like, no way, we're not touching that. We can't get involved in that. But recently, since COVID has started, all those builders are calling me now. They're all having a hard time, like just like what you guys are doing. I mean, you walked into that first idea of doing a container, you're like, holy cow, I have a whole lot of things to learn. And then the efficiencies start coming.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You dialed in.
Yeah, it's always difficult when you have a solution and you're pretty sure that the solution is accurate, but you don't logistically have everything set up to execute the solution, and you got to work it backwards, right? Yes. So, and I think about with Shane and I with shipping containers, we don't want to just build, and we likely will, but just build interesting or architecturally significant shipping container homes that fit a couple boxes that we want them to check, which is beautifully designed, really efficient housing that is affordable, right? And to build them with a purpose, not just for profit, but for
livability,
social, livability, taking into consideration certain demographics, etc. And we have a way that we can kind of do that with recreating a different underwriting structure, where we can get people into homes and put them into an equitable situation without destroying comps, right? And that was like the first thing that we really wanted to figure out. How can I put this house here and sell it for this without destroying the comp? And how can we get that person approved when they're stuck in a rent trap in Colorado, where they have a lender say, well, you can only afford $1,500 a month. It's like, I'm paying $2,500 a month pretty consistently. What do you mean? What can I afford? And what is $1,500 a month going to get me? And I was like, hold on a sec. And coming from banking, which is that's what pays my interest now. It's like that's how I like to word it. I'm like, I can figure out how to underwrite something like that, so it is still responsible lending, but it's just getting away from this standard idea of doing it. And I know that, with modular, I feel like that's someone else's concern. It's like, I'm getting outside of the normal, and how does that work? I'm sure somewhere it looks good on paper, and I'm going to find out that it's not. It's like, dude, I think it's just lending. I think you're going to borrow X dollars and you're going to pay it back with this interest, and that's how it's going to work. And I don't think there's anything tricky about it. I know that just in having conversations about shipping containers in this capacity, that's come up almost every time. Well, how is the lending work on it? And it's like, well, we don't have a lot of lenders. And that was one of the first things I did was to go out and say, I'm going to find a FHA lender that is going to understand this is steel construction. It's approved by Fannie Mae. It is, blah, blah, blah. And that was a grind. I mean, the amount of conversations I was having with lenders as a banker, they're like, no, thank you. We're not going to touch that stuff. Kind of thing. Right. I'm like, what? Do you approve steel construction? Yes. All right. So, and if it's approved, standardized form of construction, do I even have an obligation to tell you it's a shipping container? Can I just tell you it's a steel structure? And then you would have been fine. It's been really tough. Do you think that the path to entry, and maybe you think you're already there. Actually, maybe this is a better question, Audree. Can you do more now? And you said that you've quadrupled since the pandemic started.
Right.
So where is your scalability at the moment? How do you feel like you're going to scale this, or do you want to?
Yeah, I feel, well, and it's interesting because I went from residential into commercial projects or multifamily projects because I felt like I could contribute to larger teams than what I was doing on the individual front.
Sure.
And it has been, here's a perfect example. Last year, I have a whole network of people because I have Offsite Media, or offsitedirt.com, which is my media platform, because I started this conversation and I started doing this thing called the Offsite Construction Series. And what I did was every month I started meeting people and having conversations. So I got involved in this one group, and they're like, hey, Audree, you really got to go to Dallas. This was like 2 years ago. You got to go to Dallas and you got to go to this advancing prefabrication event. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go there. I'll go check it out. But the coolest part about this thing was it was all like-minded individuals that were talking about offsite construction, because all I kept doing was trying to find people and to network and to do that. So I'm in this forum with all these people and I'm like, wow, this is so great. Like I can do, like, we're meeting huge general contracting companies that are on the stage that are talking about like how they all have now divisions, a small division in modular, because they are expanding their, network and trying to understand how to put this into a way of building, they're really trying to experience it. So for me, it was like, and that's when I was like, oh, there's big banks that are lending now. Oh, there's a big, huge hotel that's going in, that's going in New York City that's getting financed. You're starting to learn these other tools to understanding how we can help and put those pieces together. And then on the consumer side, a lot of the retailers, I mean, you could go to a retailer right now for modular. They're building anywhere from like 20 to 60 homes a year.
Yeah,
it's expanding so fast, and nobody really talks about it because it's not of the norm.
Right.
But there is a tremendous amount of underground movement that is happening. And then also people are getting smarter, like, like Shane and I were talking about, just doing panelized wall systems,
right?
Having their framing all ready to go on site. I mean, it might be 20% more, but you're saving in cost for people on site. You're saving a cost for getting the efficiencies of the project done. There's just a lot of like cost savings in that, even though it might be a little bit more expensive on the front end.
Yeah. And why would you want to frame about that up in the, the middle of the winter? This is the stuff that I think about just being on a job site with a tool belt. Do you want to frame a home when it's snowing and 20 degrees? Do you want to, I wouldn't want to be outside today. I had framers down south. It's 100 degrees. Why do you want to do that? Hell no.
Right.
Same reason why I look at plumbers like, do you really want to be in the crawl space? Why would you pick plumbing as a trade? I've never understood it. Like, you know what? Plumber. It's like, were you guys talking about the panelized wall systems, Shane, in any connection to shipping containers?
Not really, more in a general sense. There are framing companies out there now that are literally, you can hand them your plan sets, and they will have everything prefabbed in their own warehouse and then bring it on site and assemble it for you. So it's literally just shows up like it would with a whole prefabricated home, but it's just the framing. So you're making sure, one, that your material's there on site, it's not getting hammered by weather. And the same crew comes out, efficiently knows how to put everything together. Everything's laid out ahead of time. It's more organization is all it is. It's more efficiency. And they'll come and do it.
I've always thought about that in terms of containers. Get them in and you get this highly engineered to the exact specifications every single time box. Still framework. And you got to go in to frame them up. And I've always thought, how easy would it be if we know if it's every single time the shipping container is the exact same dimension, without fail, how you could pre-design and engineer wall systems that are just plug and play into the shipping containers, all the way down to aesthetically making it to where it's like it's a whole catalog. Where what do you want your wall to look like? Do you want it to look like this? Do you want it to be drywall? Do you want it to be this kind of finish? Do you want paneling? Do you want, whatever? And it all comes with price range, and it's really a plug and play type thing. So I was just curious if it's something you were.
Yeah, it'd be trickier for shipping containers just to get them in and move them around. But yes.
Yes. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Give me a few days to go down the rabbit hole on that. Audree, do you guys, how much of your business right now is for new residential construction with a buyer attached versus working with other developers, investors, et cetera? So maybe talk a little bit about the breakdown of the business that you're currently having.
So right now, I would say 95% of the projects that I'm on are all developers and builders. I have one custom home that I'm doing, a very large, really unique. I'm actually excited about it. It's a Scandinavian 5,000 square foot home in Tabernash that will be featured this winter.
Cool.
But I don't really do a lot of residential because for me, again, I'm doing this big shift. I completed my projects. I had good clients. I'm happy that they got on their homes, but it wasn't something I really enjoyed. What I really love now is, working with the civil engineer, getting the utility plan together, talking to the structural engineer, getting our architects together, talking with the factory, what those timelines look like, and also holding the hands of developers because I want them to be successful in this space. Because when I got in it, I didn't get any help. Nobody really reached out. It was really, really hard. There was days when I was like, I don't know if I could do this anymore.
Well, you wouldn't be a real entrepreneur if you didn't have that moment. This is a good this is a good segue. I know that you do a lot of other stuff in the industry outside of run your company. And one thing to point out, if our listeners haven't figured this out yet, Audree is a woman.
Yes, I am.
And I know that you're big in that community and a big advocate for it. And I would love just to give you the platform to talk about it because I think it's, I was reading about some things that you have said and I was like, God, it's such a weird thing. It is still so stereotypically dominated and I think and I have a young daughter and who's interested in design. She's darn near doing CAD at 9. And I'm like, God, is this a thing?
Awesome.
I swear, sweetie, I'm not steering her towards this. She just seems to love it. And I'm just like, yay. But I think there is a general sense, and tell me if you think this is true, that there's a little trepidation if women want to get in construction. I still think they think it's the tool belt and the guys whistling at women walking by. And I think there's so many different opportunities in that. And I'd love to hear your opinions on it and have you tell people what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think that in executive positions in my space and offsite construction, there's 10 women total that I know of.
Yeah.
And so I support construction. It's called Transportation and Construction Girl here in Denver. And what they're doing is they're educating women on how to get into the field. There's another group that we created, 3 other women with myself, called Women on Site, because we want to support women to start having questions, or, you know, we have like experts come in about men's brains and women's brains and how we communicate together to be more effective. There's just a lot of things that I'm seeing in the industry, and even when women get involved, a lot of the time they're not getting supported, so they leave, and we want to keep them in it. It's the one industry that women can get paid the same amount as men. And I know that sounds so crazy, but like we were even talking about the electrician. We love women that are electricians because their hands are smaller.
Plumbers too.
Same with plumbers, right?
Totally.
And so I am a big advocate, because I feel like I can tell you right now, every meeting that I have, I am usually the only woman in that room.
I bet.
And I'm used to it, right? But I've also been really selective, and I know that you can understand this, or anybody out there that's a developer or a builder, is I'm really selective with the people I work with now, because I value my time and I honor myself and I honor those around me. So I want to make sure collectively we're respecting each other. We're having these great, you know, forums of communication, and we're also trying to train other women, because women are really great multitaskers. They can do a lot of other things, and we work twice as hard because we want to also be in that space.
Right.
So it's really great when I see, honestly, when I'm on calls and there's like a lady in the room, I am like, like, I can't wait to talk to her and bring her in, because it's so unusual.
So I have
like just waving at the other end of the room.
Yeah, come over here, come over here, come over here,
Corey.
Sit down right here. I saved you a seat.
Wait, you're not in construction yet? You want to be in construction.
You want to be.
You?
Well, I'm curious about that, because Evan and I actually just had this conversation yesterday. I think it was yesterday. And I'm going to ask your opinion, obviously, because you're a woman. Do you think, and there's certain industries where this has been a question, do you think that the reason that there are not a lot of women in construction is because they're not interested in construction? I'm talking about all forms. I'm talking about architecturally, not just trades.
I don't think they know about what kind of jobs there are on offerings, because like you were saying, even Evan, you're like, it's the tool belt and the hammer, right?
Right.
But there's so many vast opportunities in construction. It doesn't have to be being on a site.
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder if that's because, I don't know what that is. I think is because they don't take an interest earlier on, and so they don't ask the questions that a boy would, becoming a man or whatever it is, or is it just because they're just like, I think even steered that way?
Remember, like, I mean, I'm much older than probably both of you, but in high school we used to have like trade schools, like, right? We used to have like where you could build a car, or you could be in shop class.
Yes.
None of that even exists anymore.
Home ec.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I was just having that conversation the other day. You know, I think, guys, I can answer this for us. So everybody get your paper out, take your notes.
Let me get my pen.
No. I am a little bit of a nerd in most of my reading, and the things that I'm like just habitually interested in is biological and behavioral science. I love to, it's the ultimate communicator in me that is trying to understand this, you know, how people share their thoughts, how they present themselves, what does that mean, etc. And in some of this, I guess, Evan research, there seems to be some pretty definitive data that states that, generally speaking, and this is, you know, clinical psychologists doing lots of testing and peer reviewed and stuff, that generally men care more about things and women care more about people. And there's a lot of evolutionary purposes for that, but that generally seems to be what it was. And I was reading this interesting article that was talking about this, and it was out of Scandinavia, which is probably the biggest best example in the world of just creating absolutely parallel, equal opportunity environment, right? And what ended up happening is, when you said everything's on the table for everybody, there is no path, no barriers to entry for anybody, and they just open it up, that what ended up happening was that between men and women, and they actually use this as an example, of all the engineers in all of Scandinavia, 82% were still men. And of all the doctors and nurses, 80% women. And that kind of reiterated this: men care about things, women care about people.
Right.
And it also stated that men tend to be less agreeable and women tended to be more agreeable. And you start looking at all of this, and I've thought about this a lot actually since, you know, getting ready to talk with you. It's like, I don't know, some of it is exposure and some of it absolutely is barriers to entry, for sure. It would be foolish to say that that's not there.
Sure.
But I think where there's an opportunity for women in construction is women, it is proven out pretty well that women are better organizers than men. Men are better implementers than women. So it's like, give me the task. A task can be accomplished. I say this with curbs on it for everyone listening. Don't all of a sudden get in the comment section and be like, I know somebody who's totally opposite, right?
Oh yeah.
This is, we're talking about the mass here,
Yeah,
right?
the rumbling happening.
Yes, yeah. I'm sure there's somebody that doesn't fit that mold, but where
Right.
construction is, especially management, is like 100% organization.
Mm-hmm.
Like 100% organizing schedules and materials and delivery and logistics and people. And it is an immense juggling act to run an entire project that requires a high level of organizational aptitude.
Right.
And it's really where I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said this, Audrey, in another forum, but that women have an opportunity, as long as they realize it's not swinging the hammer necessarily to get into, quote, construction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really all we're doing is building habitable spaces, right? Or spaces that are going to house businesses, or it could be even in infrastructure. And I think we could do a lot better if women did get involved organizationally, because I think that's where men generally struggle more generally.
Yep.
And I also think we could add a lot more people in there that care a lot more about humans than just the thing. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I get that we're attracted to building things, right? And there's probably something evolutionary biological to that as well, maybe even damn near genetically. But somebody has to live in that, and the home is for a person. You know what I mean? And I really feel like that's the other part in the process that I've noticed fails is, you know, when Shane and I have worked with clients, you know, it's very easy to think about the hardwood floors just need to get installed. And then, you know, you just have this client sitting over there like, I feel like I don't like it and I don't live here and that's not good for me. And I have dogs, and did we pick out the right material? And I got kids. Is this easy to clean? Am I going to have to do something with it? And we're like, I don't care. The floors look beautiful. These beautiful hardwood floors. And it's like, can somebody please talk with the client and make sure they're happy? You know what I mean? Like, it's all their money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We should check with them, you know? Feel like that, I don't know. But I think if we can get past the thing part, that we're building a thing, and that the thing is for somebody, and to get that from A to Z is for somebody, number one. But number two, it requires an immense amount of organization. And I think biologically that is a door wide open for women to not only get in, but to excel and potentially run laps around some of us more crude men who like to point at stuff, you know. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but it was something that I was thinking about a lot.
I think you articulated that very well. I think that we're more community driven. I think we're, you know, we're nurturing,
right?
You know, but I also see great assets in a lot of men that I work that are like that as well. It doesn't mean one or the other.
Sure.
It just it depends on your team, right? And it depends on really the leadership of that company and where they're coming from and what are their important goals and their intentions to help others and to significantly change the world and design and build and create. So I would love to see more women. I am always trying to figure out how we can bring more in and open this dialogue, but it's the same thing with the industry. I'm also trying to be the pioneer out there, changing the industry to think about offsite construction as you guys are. I mean, we're just all a little crazy maybe sometimes.
Totally.
But we certainly try, right? That's the big part. and enjoying it, right? I think that's the bigger piece too. It's like I've paused a little bit more. I've like enjoyed it a little bit more, really nurtured people in conversations. And I feel like, you know, Evan and Shane, maybe it's the same thing for you. You know, we also have to realize there is a human factor to all of this. And
100%.
if we can't be connected with people and understand that in the general sense of it, then what are we doing at all anyway?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I couldn't agree more. And a lot of people say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Right? Like, well, if it's not broke, it works. We build houses, great. And it's like, first of all, for a first-time home buyer in the state of Colorado, it's now over like $500,000.
I know, it's so crazy.
In what world is that okay? Like, that's crazy to me. And then we want to sit around and on the other side of the coin say, oh, we really love and respect our frontline workers during the pandemic, the people at the grocery store, they're so important. And it's like, but they're not so important to figure out how to give livable wages, affordable housing that they can afford.
How about
like
just building like condos, right? Like we can't even do that
totally.
without there being an issue.
Can't even do that.
The first house I bought was a condo.
Yep.
Right. Out of college, right? Because we had an opportunity to do that because that was the first house to be able to get into the next house.
That's right. Yep.
We don't
just
even
get
have
in.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough out there. I feel I you know, and that's why a lot of people rent, like you were talking about, Evan, and they're just like, I forget it. I'm just gonna rent and I'm just gonna go live my life and have experiences and do that.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad
life. Which may not
either.
be a bad thing. yeah. That's if I could redo it again, I might just listen to records and travel. You know? Yeah.
I'm kind of there with you.
Yeah. Before we're coming up on the time here a little bit, but I wanted to talk to you specifically about something. I would love your opinion on this that Shane and I are evaluating, which very quick context. I was looking initially at building a second home, vacation home, small cabin, somewhere pretty away from the city, so I can get the kids away. No computers. It's called a book. Enjoy it and sit by the river. And as I started doing that, there was a lot of available land that was affordable. And then when we got looking at buying land and building something, it was like this really ugly thing started happening, which was nobody able to build it for me. And it's partially because there was no need for people to leave the city as a contractor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would I go to Jefferson to try to build something? And then you're trying to look for builders or people who could do the work in Jefferson, for example. And there's like a dude who's like, I think I can do it. You're like, oh, I'm gonna pass, And the other thing I started noticing was
I got a hammer and some nails, and
I built a fence with my paw. It's like this is a little harder than that. The other part was that I was like, okay, well, maybe I won't build. Maybe I'll stick with what I'm comfortable with. Maybe I'll buy a small cabin somewhere and I can renovate it over time. I can do that on my own. And it was like the cabin inventory was decimated. There was nothing. There was like 8 properties for sale in the entire state. And what I noticed was that, well, no one's building new inventory for that, right? The secondary home market that could be Airbnb, short-term rental. And then when there was a cabin or a smaller, more affordable house, let's call it 400 to 500,000, that was sitting on a couple acres out somewhere pretty, it was gone in a second. It was a frenzy for that stuff. So it told me that if it's finished, then it would sell. And so Shane and I are now looking at saying, well, maybe what we can do is just build new inventory and put for sale, because some of those places are getting a higher dollar per square foot, but because they're smaller in the use, they can still be technically Colorado affordable, right? They can be less than 500,000, but and I can sell it for 800 a foot. But it won't cost me 800 a foot. So I think maybe that was the opportunity. But there is this, okay, that sounds great, Evan. And I would say, okay, Shane, will you go and build a house in Salida for me, a cabin for me? And he was like, no, And I think maybe this is where modular. So my question to you is, can we buy a modular home from you, and can I put it on some land somewhere?
Yes, I can help you.
Okay. And I think for a lot of people that might open up the door too.
Right.
I
will
agree with you. I'm seeing a change in the industry too. Hospitality was so closed down, and even the second home market that you're talking about, even hospitality is changing. If you notice,
Yes.
people are doing little house resorts and things like that, which makes it exciting. I do new business development for urban air living, which is basically they build, design compact living spaces that are like 450 square feet up to maybe 1,500 square feet. So, but the problem that we're having is that all of our modular factories now, with this big boom and this big escalation of people understanding it a little bit more and wanting to do it, is that our factories are filled into like next May.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So now we're
So we need more factories.
More factories are coming up, right? And seeing that opportunity open. But I agree with you, Evan. I think that everybody maybe not everybody, but I'm kind of like you. I love nature. I mean, that's why I love the state, going hiking and biking and being out there and bringing your kids out and just not having to be maybe all in the city all the time. It's like an experience now just to do that. And so, first you're just trying to find the land, and hopefully you can find land somewhat affordable. I don't even know what that is anymore.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, well, we can get the house out there. But really, I think the solution, honestly, is I had a guy on my event that I was telling you about before, and they're doing these things called G-Pods, which are basically container design product. They're steel frame home, but it's net zero, and you can have water there. So it's all efficiency all in one, kind of like a trailer, right? But it's nicer. It's more modern. It kind of opens and it collapses. So they're doing that in Australia. I mean, they're doing all these really cool things, but not in the United States.
I know. It's so frustrating. God.
Well, we're stubborn. We're probably more stubborn than most countries. And it's not because we're stupid by any means, but we're, it's just, it's the good old boy network that we have here. And I'm not going to get political, but that's what it is. And it's just, and I think that's what's part of the construction issue too, is the refusal to adapt and move on. And like Evan said,
changing that. And
I hope
very positive about that. And
I hope
we're having the conversations of this change in order to educate more people that there's a choice.
Right. And there are plenty of choices. And I think it's just a matter of getting the information out there more, not only to the people like me, but to the end consumer, to come back to people like me and say, I want to go that route. And so Audree can do it. Let's put it together. It works for everybody. And there's no reason not to certainly consider it, but if not, go that direction. It solves a lot of problems like Evan and I have talked about, especially for not just second homes in the mountains, but people that want to live in those areas, because there are areas that land is pretty reasonably priced. We're talking under $100,000 price, but the feasibility of stick building something there it's not there. It's not attainable. No, it's very disruptive.
You know what the great thing is though? The other thing that we are expanding that I have to say, even in the Denver market, which I think is a really active market, more realtors I'm finding are starting to educate themselves on this process too.
Yep.
So if they can't find something for their client, they're like, hey, if you really love this land, let's have a different discussion. So I think little by little, we're making progress, which makes me happy. And again, it doesn't have to just be modular. Anything that you can design, build offsite and bring on site is going to be a great success in the right direction.
100%. And as a realtor, I will tell everyone that's realtors listening to this, we have to do our continuing education credits, start taking more classes on the elective side that have to do with prefabricated, modular construction, alternative construction. There's plenty of classes out there now to get involved in that. You have to do that because the realtor is another big avenue to push this. So hopefully that
just so you know, I mean, there is look at the Builder Realty Council. They're doing a builder breakfast. I mean, everybody's starting to engage a little bit more because we're also trying to help others find homes.
Yes.
How else can we do that? So
exactly.
I do think that there's a lot of great networks out there.
100.
I don't want to take this. I don't want to take this to a negative place either, but speaking to realtors, you also have somewhat of an obligation, not necessarily to be an advocate or to be educated on these other forms of construction, but you have a responsibility, in my opinion, to not push people away from these kind of things because you're simply uneducated about it.
Right.
And because you're the person of influence in that that environment, right? You're the
Right,
trusted
in that
source,
relationship,
right?
absolutely.
Yep.
And if you say no, that's not good, no, and it's simply rooted on the fact you're uncomfortable talking about, or you're uneducated about it, it's easier to steer them towards somebody. I would say that you have some responsibility as presenting yourself, not just presenting yourself as the expert, but being the expert in that transaction that's supposed to be and protecting the client, to be up to date with this stuff so you don't put misinformation out into the market.
Yep. As a realtor, you're the guy that knows a guy. That's half your job.
Right. Maybe they just need to listen to this podcast.
I agree.
More of them are.
What they need is more Evan and Shane. They need more Evan and Shane in their lives. So that's really what I mean. Well, Audree, thank you. I'm going to probably hit you up, Shane and I, sometime after this. I got some things cooking that I would love to see if maybe we can get on your schedule.
For sure.
And then also, not only your company, but all the other things that you're doing. You stated some of the other organizations and stuff. Send that to Shane.
Yep.
Because I'm not gonna do it. I'm not the tech guy.
Speaking of organizational things,
yeah. I care about things, guys. But send it to Shane so that we can post it and link it.
Yep, we'll put all that in there.
I would love to do that. That would be
sure.
amazing. I really appreciate it.
And we'll have you sometime in the near future, and we can follow up on this, and we can figure out where you're going, because I think you're going to be somebody really fun to watch. And I applaud you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
not
That's
just
so nice.
you're a woman, because you're a legitimate professional and executive. So it'll be fun to watch you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Go
Thank
get them,
guys.
Audrey. Appreciate you coming on for sure.
Thank you.
Especially with we've jostled the schedule several times with you. I apologize.
Yeah.
That's how we do it. That's how we build, right?
That's how we do it.
Constantly in change, but that's
Thank God somebody organized that for me. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank everyone that is listening. Make sure that you like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow. It helps get good content out. You want to know about what people like Audrey are doing, so this is helpful. You can find us on all platforms that podcasts are on. We're pretty well covered. And other than that, be nice to each other. This is it for all that we know. So treat some people with some kindness. Listen, and you might learn something from some people. Maybe not me, but maybe somebody like Audrey and John.
For sure, Audrey.
Yeah. But thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate Audrey.
With you guys.
Yeah,
I appreciate
absolutely.
this opportunity, and I wish everybody great success out there. Let's keep going.
Absolutely.
All right.
I agree. Thank you so much.
You guys.
We'll be in touch.
All right, we'll sign off. Bye, guys.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.